dogs, let me tell you about a friend. It's Craig LeBlanc, where the good times never end. Talking Parks and Rec, it's a show you gotta know. Welcome one and all to the Daily Parks and Rec Show. It's the Daily Parks and Rec Show.
Emotional intelligence, I guess if I could really just sum it up, it means that we're in a people-oriented business. A lot of what we do is not quantitative and data, it is data-driven, but we're about taking care of people. People are messy, and we've got all kinds of issues, whether it's our staff, and primarily as a leader, we're taking care of our staff, but our staff are taking care of people on the front lines every day. Being able to empathize with people, being able to connect with people, meeting people where they're at, that's emotional intelligence to me. And it's highly critical as we move up into leadership roles.
All right, we are live again on this Monday. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Sorry, I'm battling a little sinus infection that I had from my Utah trip. Beautiful state. If you haven't been to Utah, which is where Sean kind of lived in those Rocky Mountains in Colorado, it's beautiful up there. But Sean, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Craig. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Well, before we get started, I wanted to thank one of our primary sponsors, Outdoor Link. They help a lot of cities become smart cities, just as you're becoming, hopefully a lot of us are having smart homes that start to do a lot more for us, so we don't have to turn the lights on and open the garage door and turn the AC on. So imagine if you could do this with your entire city, control the entire city from an iPhone or an iPad. Outdoor Link is one of the hardware companies that installs all those devices, so you can control like your splash pads and door locks and baseball field lights. And they've been with us since the beginning. And then after that, I want Jovi to go ahead and play our IRPA thank you video. We went up to that convention. Man, if you haven't been to that Illinois State Conference, it is a beast. It's almost like a mini NRPA. So I recommend anybody, even if you're not in Illinois, to attend that one. So a big shout out to IRPA for hosting us on their recent convention. Jovi, why don't you go ahead and play those, and then we'll come back and start our conversation with Sean.
In today's parks and recreation industry, communication, safety, and efficiency go hand in hand. That's where Outdoor Link comes in, delivering smart technology that empowers city departments and community planners to do more, smarter. Outdoor Link's platform connects and automates everything that keeps your parks running smoothly. From lighting and locks to signage, water features, Wi-Fi, and digital advertising. Control and schedule park lights for safety and energy savings. Remotely manage facility access. Update digital displays in real time. Coordinate fountains and splash pads. Provide public connectivity. And even run community or sponsorship campaigns on digital screens, all from one simple, unified platform, giving you real-time control, data, and cost efficiency. For parks and recreation agencies, that means safer spaces, smarter resource use, faster responses, and stronger community engagement. And behind every great park story is great infrastructure. That's why Outdoor Link proudly supports DPRS Media Company, helping the Daily Parks and Rec Show amplify the voices of professionals shaping our communities every day. Outdoor Link, smart, connected solutions for parks, recreation, and beyond.
This year, we didn't just attend an event. We became part of something bigger. IRPA 2026 brought together leaders, innovators, and community builders, all united by one mission: to strengthen parks, recreation, and the people they serve. For DPRS Media Network, it was an honor to join IRPA 2026 and take part in meaningful, real-time conversations, capturing stories and amplifying voices that matter. To IRPA, thank you for creating a space where collaboration thrives and the future of parks and recreation is shaped together. We extend our deepest gratitude to Amelia and all our partners who made these live interviews possible. IRPA 2026 wasn't just an event, it was a reminder that when communities connect and stories are shared, impact follows. From all of us at DPRS Media Network, thank you, IRPA. Thank you, partners and sponsors. We're honored to stand with you and excited for what's next.
All right. So now you spent most of your time in Colorado. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I was about 15 years in Colorado, preceding the last 2 that I've been in Arizona. I was with 2 different agencies in Colorado, one on the Front Range in the more urban area, and then very remote rural area in Northwest Colorado, which was gorgeous, God's country.
Oh yeah, it's like now up there. That's where all the windmills are, and it's flat as a pancake. Before the mountains start, that's what they call the Front Range, correct?
Well, right before the mountains start, where all the population center has pushed up against the mountains, so easy access, the kind of urban corridor, up and down the I-25 corridor there. I grew up in Boulder, and I worked in an agency just outside of Boulder, Lafayette, as it was coming of age. Kind of in the mid 2000s to middle 20 teens. And then I was in Northwest Colorado for about the last 10 years.
Yeah. And so that's along the mountain range. You've got Boulder's kind of north, and then you get Denver, and then is it Colorado Springs below that? Those like
south,
the metropolitan areas.
And it has become, like a lot of the West, it grew up in the 90s and 2000s. And so the population boom there. Basically from Fort Collins on the north side all the way through Pueblo on the south side is just one interconnected urban corridor in a lot of respects.
Yeah, that's Colorado. And I think it's still kind of booming. A lot of people are moving to Colorado just because it's I think now that you have these jobs where you can just work from anywhere, people are choosing to live in places that they can kind of play a little bit more and then just work from home.
Yeah, quality of life and recreation plays such a big role in that. It's such a destination and really a quality indoor and outdoor recreation. Really.
Yeah, that seems to be the culture a lot in Colorado. That it's a very quality of life focused culture in Colorado, which is, if I understand it correctly, that's kind of why they put so much effort into their park systems versus a lot of other states, which is kind of an afterthought. I think Colorado is out in the forefront as to what they want their cities to look like.
Yeah, they really are. And they have willing constituencies because of that quality of life desire by your common resident. And so you see a lot of initiatives, tax initiatives pass in a lot of agencies, whether it be for open space or bond measures. They dedicated, I think we mentioned in our pre-interview that, lottery dollars in Colorado going exclusively to parks and recreation is unique amongst the landscape in the states. And so you have those supplementary dollars to fund projects and support ongoing maintenance and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I've also noticed that they take trails to a whole nother level. I mean, these are almost like connecting cities and communities. It's not just kind of within a community. The trails are extravagant, or they're very well interconnected.
yeah, multimodal access. That's been the sexy thing in our area for a long time, right? And it's quality of life. If you can commute on a bike 10 miles, versus driving through traffic, that's a big deal. It's a lifestyle changer. So yeah, they've taken it to a whole new level, and they've got the space and the urban planning to do it, versus in the large metroplex that I find myself in now, Phoenix, where so much of it's been, built out and developed. Yeah. It's hard to then go back and achieve that kind of interconnectivity that people want.
And what's the official term that y'all are using? Multimodal community?
Multimodal, yeah, the pedestrian, walking, biking, e-biking, the mopeds, all the different things, that you could get around on. And of course, the user conflicts that come along with those. And so what's allowed, what's not allowed, and all the different prohibitions. I find myself living on the west side of the Valley of the Sun here in Phoenix, and I'm right along a river corridor trail that's got about 20 miles of connectivity. And, it's nice to be able to, jump on a bike and get, 10 miles in either direction. Get you out of the cabin fever here, that can happen in the city.
Yeah, when we were growing up, you basically had 3 forms of transportation. You could walk, you could ride a bike, or a car. And now there's 50 different, with all these new
Rollerblades, although I'm showing my age there with rollerblades. I don't know that that's a thing anymore.
Yeah, I think we had skateboards too, but none of those had like these motors in them. I mean, you can see these guys going like 30, 40 miles an hour on a regular little walking path. How are y'all? How did they handle all these new forms of transportation that are much quicker? And I don't know.
It's such a convenience, and it's here to stay. I was actually just working on a new e-bike ordinance here in my new agency just this week. We're a smaller agency that hasn't had to deal with it because we haven't had the type of trails that would attract it. But you can see it. It's up and down our main streets. It's up and down. It's in our parks. It's everywhere. And it extends that quality of life activity, the access to it. For guys our age and older, to be able to go on a trail and commute via bike where, hey, I might not have if I didn't have pedal assist, if I didn't have a little 750 watt motor on there. And, being able to even go on a trail where I was in Northwest Colorado was surrounded by public land on every side. And so we worked with, our state and federal, land managing partners to really allow e-bike access in new ways. And, to have somebody be able to go on an uphill trail that has a 10, 15% grade to it that you would never think of trying to accomplish with a, normal pedal bike is pretty awesome.
And what are some of the friction points and pushbacks that y'all kind of, I imagine you have the walkers and runners. They're like, keep these e-bikes off our path. But then you got a lot of that population saying, well, it's much safer to go on the walking path than it is, on the interstate with these things.
Right. And you hate to see the injuries happen, and so only allowing for up to a certain size motor and only allowing where the break-off speeds, are at 20 miles an hour and less and things of that nature so that you don't have those catastrophic accidents. But you also, it's an education for the public land managers too, to understand that, they, depending on the size and scope of the device, they're not having the same, maintenance impacts as, say a traditional motorized dirt bike and, a class 3 e-bike, things of that nature. So it is educating both the users, but then also the public land managers on, this new, and, when you add in horses and dogs and all the different things you can find on trails, shared use is, going to continue to be an issue that land managers deal with.
Yeah. Now, how did you get into Parks and Rec? Did you kind of know when you were young something you wanted to do? You discovered it later in life?
So I like to say I was a jock and grew up in a gym. I was a basketball guy. So I grew up in all kinds of sports. Family's originally from Kentucky. So basketball is, eat, sleep, and breathe. And brought that with me to Colorado. And played sports through college, Northern Colorado, Go Bears. And really enjoyed that. Out of college, I got into youth programming within the church setting, as well as coaching and teaching. And so did that for a number of years out of college. And I found myself really gravitating toward sports and recreation and the ability to connect with people, one-on-one or in a team setting. And so I did that for, like I said, several years. And then always had a great love for Colorado. Like I said, growing up in a gym, Colorado's a leader in indoor recreation space. So I was always sneaking into the rec center or, at the rec center, one of those gym rat kids. And so you just, go where you're comfortable. And so I got into recreation center management. That was my first gig in the public park and rec industry. I had a hiatus in grad school in New England, where got out of grad school in Florida and then moved from Florida to Massachusetts in the middle of winter. It was the worst mistake I ever made early in my marriage. And it snowed. I'm not from Colorado, but it snowed probably 40 days in a row in New Hampshire and Massachusetts that winter. My wife said, "What are we doing?" But I helped open a brand new campus recreation center at a small college in Massachusetts. And it was half dedicated to the campus and half open to the community. And so it was a really unique partnership where the city and the college partnered to build the center. And I found myself really gravitating toward the services to the community. So I had that stark contrast right there in what I served, and realized, oh, this is for me. Just really being in a community epicenter like a recreation center where you're serving all ages, all demographics.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
And how old were you then when you kind of had that experience?
I was probably 25.
Yeah.
And, just like I said, seeing from cradle to grave, people coming through the rec center, whether it was our daytime crowd while students were in school mostly, and taking a silver sneaker class, or bringing their kiddos to our, drop off childcare, all the way through our evening, athletic programs, intramural programs, and things of that nature. Really became an epicenter for that small city community. And that was the other thing I really enjoyed, is being in kind of an urban area, but in a smaller agency where you know all your coworkers of various disciplines and so forth.
Yeah. I'm always amazed at how Parks and Rec assigns these very seems like older adult jobs to like a 20-year-old.
You're right. But the nice thing about being in campus recreation is you're serving a bunch of 18 to 21-year-olds. And so, you're older and more mature at 25, and I got married young. So, I felt older, and it was meaningful. And campus recreation is great, but the challenge of only serving a single demographic versus, the rewarding aspect of what we do in public parks and rec, it's shown through.
All right. So when you were at 25 and you're given these big tasks, what were some of the shortcomings or skill sets that you realized you didn't have that you kind of shored up over those next few years?
Oh, that's such a great question. There's so many, all the shout out to all of our campus programs out there in recreation, sports management, et cetera. But you're not prepared going into, a budget cycle, for a municipal or public agency, going into risk management issues that you deal with, the legal issues, it takes time, how to implement federal state legislation, whether it's AED mandate or, at that time we had that was when, it's a little more controversial, but we had the marriage legislation happen where we had to recognize same-sex marriages for the first time in Massachusetts. And so changing our membership structure to open up, and then dealing with protests and, just things of that nature that, every day is different, and that's why I love this gig. I'm sure many of your guests talk about that, but I might be dealing with a project management issue one day. I might be painting lines on fields the next day, dealing with horticulture and, arbor issues for one day. Just all the different things that it just takes time and a can-do attitude to jump into.
Yeah. What I've discovered is there's no gentle way to learn how to sail through a storm aside from just sailing through it.
Yeah.
And when it's your first time, it's just like, how did you deal with not knowing, not understanding, knowing that you just had to figure it out and get that first one under your belt?
I think it's just, you have to have a yes attitude that I can take this on. And like you said, learning your way through it. I talked to some peers in Colorado one time. They were in an interview, and the interviewer asked her a question of, well, how are you going to do this? You don't have any experience with it. I'm going to do it the same way I've done everything else that I didn't have experience with. I'm going to dive right into it. I'm going to learn as we go. I'm going to apply the things I do know and ask for help on the things I don't know.
Yeah. And I think Parks and Rec professionals just get comfortable with never leaving the state of, I don't know how to do this.
Right.
For 30 years, they still don't know how to do what they're doing. They're just figuring it out.
Because we're an amalgamation of so many different disciplines, right? We just have so many, you can't be expected to know everything about aquatics and fitness and sports and landscaping and, all of the different things. It takes a team. And, we tend to get thrown all the various ancillary services, whether it's cemeteries or libraries or, all of those things as well. I have a mug here on my board over here from a technology company that says director of Parks and Recreation, director of just about everything.
Right. Director of everything the rest of the city doesn't want.
Right. Well, and then when I was in Northwest Colorado, I was not in a municipal agency. It was a special taxing district, which I know are more common in elsewhere, Illinois, et cetera. But then you really do become the director of everything because you have HR and marketing and IT and finance all, under one umbrella, more like a city manager. And so you're dealing with, high level administrative things, even if you're a smaller agency. You still have to figure out all those functions. So
all right. So now, how old were you when you moved to the Colorado part of your journey, and then what did that look like?
See, I was in New England, both New Hampshire and Massachusetts, from about 25 to early 30s. So I was there 7 years, and then moved to Colorado in the late 2000s, and I was probably 31-ish, somewhere in there. And first job back in Colorado was facility manager, recreation superintendent there at the city of Lafayette. Managed the Bob Burger Recreation Center, such a staple in the community. It's been around since the late 80s, and kind of the building boom that Colorado had with indoor recreation space in the 80s and 90s, with the initial passing of the Great Outdoors Colorado legislation and some of the funding that we talked about. You saw just a boom of recreation centers, recreation design schools started up. Just a really exciting time to be in parks and recreation, and Colorado being a destination.
Yeah. When did that lottery revenue come in? What year was that?
I don't want to be inaccurate. I want to say it was the early 90s, either early 90s, late 80s, sometime in there. And then it just had its 25 or 30 year, they did some great advocacy work to have it renew in Colorado. And so to secure that funding source, and there's always competition for it, whether it be from education or, so on and so forth, that they were able to secure that ongoing. Because, you've seen the value of that over time. You've got a 30-year history of those investments and, what they've accomplished in various agencies.
Yeah, I know in Louisiana we earmark a lot of our lottery funding go to education, but I guess it just shows how important Parks and Rec is to Colorado. If they're going to earmark 100% of that goes to
yes, it does, and you can see the impact of that. Right, those dollars go a long way toward a trail project or a recreation center. They're doled out both by competitive grant as well as by population in two separate functions. And you can just see the impact of those, where the quality of life opportunities are so prevalent. You take an agency, population of 10, 20, 30,000, and you're not going to find the type of amenities that are available anywhere else in the country, between indoor recreation space, number of parks, number of, high dollar amenities. Yeah.
What portion of your revenue came from that?
Yeah, I couldn't say. It's not a large portion. Again, it's doled out by population. I want to say probably less than 10%, but it's it's still a significant chunk of change. And then the competitive Great Outdoors Colorado programs, fund just so many improvement projects around the state. I was privileged to be part of several in both Lafayette as well as Meeker, where I was, whether it was building a pond, adding on trails, paying for a recreation center addition, things of that, not in its entirety, but making that more affordable. We all know how expensive projects are becoming. And so the ability to supplement with those kind of dollars is critical to that ongoing investment in Colorado.
Now, is that shared among state parks and local municipal parks as well?
Yes. Yep. Okay. It sure is. So
pretty much
open space, parks, recreation are all eligible.
Nice. Okay, so how was your advancement? Because did you move up to director, or when you were in Colorado, is that something you just recently got?
Yeah. So I came in as a facility manager, managing a recreation center, and then moved into a division manager role in Lafayette as a superintendent. We had kind of a unique split. of recreation facilities and seniors. We're one department, and then our parks, open space, and golf entirely separate department in that agency. And so was kind of the recreation center and recreation superintendent was kind of my advancement there. And then I did really start to yearn for a director role after about 10 years of doing that, and looked for larger agency division manager positions and department director positions all over, and ended up in Meeker as my first director position. And smaller agency, but again, kind of comparable to an agency 10 times its size in terms of amenities, full indoor recreation center, 9 parks, 15 miles of single track trail management, and just a lot of administrative management, being in a special taxing district. So that was my first director role prior to being here in El Mirage, Arizona.
Yeah. Now, were you active in the state association and NRPA along the way?
I sure was. NRPA and CPRA. NRPA, been to director school, been to Congress many times. I led our agency accreditation processing in Lafayette. I believe we were the 3rd agency accredited in Colorado. And so it's a big project. I'm a big believer in accreditation and best practices, but it is not a small project, and it's not to be taken lightly. I remember talking to one of my cohorts in Colorado at the time, and she said, "Yeah, I worked on this for 20 hours a week for 6 months." And I said, "I'm smarter than I could get it done faster than that." No, it was every bit of that on the weekends, and compiling information and writing narrative and so forth. So yeah, I've been involved with accreditation for a long, long time. And then our state association, we're fortunate to have a lot of cohort teams or interest sections in Colorado, and I led our facility manager section, was head of our director section, and really such a big believer in continuing education in our profession. So yeah.
Now, what encouraging words would you have to a department that is considering being an accredited department? What's some landmines you wish you would have not stepped on that maybe you can warn people about?
I don't know about landmines. What I would just say is to go into it with open eyes, as I said, and know that you're doing it for you. Yes, it's a great stamp of approval to share with your community, and affirm that you are following best practices out there in the industry, but you're really doing it to build your own internal team and to give assurance that you are a high quality agency. And that makes a difference in recruiting. It makes difference in retention, and as well as just, being able to compile those best practices. And so, there's a lot of just trickle down benefit that accreditation has. As a visitor, especially working for a small agency, I'm able to, copy and steal everything and, duplicate things that we never would have thought of, plans that I have access to. NRPA is such a great resource, but being able to be boots on the ground and see things, whether it's an online or an in-person accreditation. I have a couple agencies this year, potentially for on-site visits. Super looking forward to diving into their material and seeing things, firsthand.
Yeah. If I understand that process correctly, you'll find that a lot of the stuff that they're asking, you're already doing, you just haven't documented. But were there some things that you weren't doing that you realized were important after they were kind of asking you for this information?
Yeah, absolutely. Strategic planning comes to mind. In Lafayette, we had done master planning, and we had separate, kind of department level strategic plans, again, because of the 2-department structure, but being able to kind of marry those and look at, strategic planning from an agency more holistically and values based was something that, was really eye opening that first time through. And kind of, it wasn't prescribed necessarily by the standard, but as the process of compiling, we looked at ourselves, in the mirror and said, hey, introspectively, how can we do this better?
All right. So, well, we only have like a minute left to the break. Maybe we'll take the break a little early because I don't want to start a big question and interrupt you in the middle. So Jovi's going to go ahead and play our 400th episode. Thank you, which we're already on episode 433, I think. But we're trying to get all the mileage we can out of this, thanking the entire Parks and Rec community of America for supporting the work we're doing, creating a media company that uplifts the voices of Parks and Recreation across the country. So thank you for everybody. Thank you for people like Sean coming on the show and sharing their story and all the wisdom that they've learned over the years. And then after that, she's going to promote one of our other shows called The Athlete's Commute, by our co-host Jordan Ziff. She's a former professional soccer athlete that played for Brazil, and she picks up current professional athletes and gives them a ride to the game or to practice and kind of interviews them about what they do to prepare for that kind of stuff. So it's a pretty cool little concept. So Jovi, if you want to play those two, and then we'll come right back and finish up our conversation with Sean.
It didn't start with a studio or a big budget or a perfect plan. It started with belief that stories matter, belief that voices deserve to be heard, belief that community is powerful. What began as a single conversation has grown into something far bigger than us. Today we pause, we reflect, and we say thank you. To our guests, thank you for showing up, for being honest, for trusting us with your stories and letting the world hear them. To our partners and sponsors, thank you for standing with us when the vision was still taking shape. Your belief gave this network its foundation. And to our audience, the ones who listened, who watched, who shared, who believed. You didn't just support DPRS Media Network, you built it. This past year changed everything. We grew our shows, we raised our standards, we reached new communities, and we told stories that needed to be told. From Parks and Recreation to sports, youth, technology, and culture, we learned something important. Growth isn't about numbers, it's about impact. As we grow, our mission becomes clear. Our mission is to create media that matters, media that educates, media that inspires, media that connects people through honest, human storytelling. To spotlight the people, the programs, and the ideas shaping parks, recreation, sports, and the future of our shared spaces. And our vision is bold. We envision a media network that doesn't just document the world, but helps shape it, where local voices spark global change, where communities see themselves reflected, and where media is a force for good. The future ahead is bigger than any single episode. More voices, more stories, more collaboration. Live events, original films, deeper conversations, and a growing community united by purpose. From episode 1 to episode 400, thank you for believing when it was hard. Thank you for staying when it was uncertain. And thank you for walking this journey with us. This is DPRS Media Network, built by community, driven by purpose, powered by stories. And we're just getting started.
Before the game, before the lights, before the pressure, there's a moment most people never see. Welcome to The Athlete's Commute, a podcast distributed by DPRS Media Network, co-produced by Her Sports, and hosted by Jordan Ziff. Each episode, Jordan gets behind the wheel, driving athletes to practice, to training, to game day, while getting to know who they really are beyond the jersey. The mindset, the grind, the sacrifices, the moments no one talks about. No scripts, no filters, just real conversations in real motion. Because every athlete has a journey, and every journey deserves to be heard. This is The Athlete's Commute. Buckle up.
All right. So I don't know if we're going to get to all the things I want to talk about with you, but I did want to make sure before we left that we talked about emotional intelligence, team building, and personal care, what that means to you and how you incorporate that into your team. So we'll start with emotional intelligence. Maybe define what that means to you and then how you implement that in your day-to-day practice.
Well, emotional intelligence, I guess if I could really just sum it up, it means that we're in a people-oriented business. A lot of what we do is not quantitative and data, it is data-driven, but we're about taking care of people. And, people are messy, and we've got all kinds of issues, whether it's our staff, and primarily as a leader, we're taking care of our staff, but our staff are taking care of people on the front lines every day. And so being able to empathize with people, being able to connect with people, meeting people where they're at, that's emotional intelligence to me. And it's highly critical as we move up into leadership roles. We're leaders managing leaders, that we remind ourselves of that. And again, goes to our first pillar in NRPA, health and wellness. What's that pillar about? It's about taking care of ourselves. And social equity, essentially, if you boil it down, is about taking care of others. And so take care of ourselves, take care of others, we're accomplishing those first two pillars.
Yeah. And I think I've heard it referred to as EQ versus like IQ,
Right.
having a high emotional intelligence. Is there any type of books or courses that you kind of recommend or give to your staff?
So I actually, when I was in Meeker, we developed an internal service process where we would train all staff in our internal and external standards. And we had a component on emotional intelligence, and really just very simple, that we care about you as a human being, that we want you to take care of yourself first, and that we want to live out that value first. I want to make time for you to recreate, to be in programs, to, we work, long hours, nights, weekends, all of those things. We want to, get in those margin things that are going to invest back into ourselves as well. So I really try to make space for that for both myself as well as our staff.
Yeah. And then what are some of the use cases of having a great emotional intelligence? I'm kind of thinking, imagine, not that this would ever happen to a Parks and Rec employee, but imagine you have a parent that's not happy with how things went on some soccer field or something, and they're just like venting on you and chewing you out and that kind of stuff. How does your emotional intelligence play into that? What might be a low emotional intelligence response versus a high emotional intelligence response?
That's why we want to hire great people, right? Because it's also really hard to teach, which is why I hesitate to recommend any one resource. There's lots of good ones out there, but it's really a human being thing, hiring, people of great character and personality. Because again, if we can't take care of others if we don't take care of ourselves, is what I like to say. And that person, that staff member that you've done a good job of taking care of, they're going to respond in a way that de-escalates a situation. And again, all of those external customer service factors, if you're not doing internal customer service well, then your external isn't going to be solid. And so, serving our people first, for me, that takes the form of, working out daily and, spending time with my family and doing different recreation activities. But it might look different for other staff, who are, big readers or, walker, whatever that is, but having to have time to invest in oneself.
Yeah. And I like how you framed it around this being a really human focused industry, because, as AI starts to take maybe some of the technical keyboard tasks away from us, I think that's going to leave more of the emotional intelligence tasks left to do, handling a lot of the emotional outbursts that we might experience with our community.
I think we're so safe because, like I said, everybody needs quality of life in their community. We're not putting wastewater centers on the front page of the website. I like to say, it's all parks, trails, and programs. And, we're going to be around, we're going to be solid in terms of people are always going to need quality of life. And we also need to take care of the, world around us, that third pillar of conservation, or I like to change it to stewardship. That's not going anywhere either, because we got to take care of our water, and we got to take care of our, urban canopy and the turf and all of the different things to make us a big player for quality of life.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk more about this personal care component. What does that mean? Can you define that? What does personal care mean for you? What does it mean for your staff? And then how do you encourage people to kind of take care of themselves personally?
Like I said, I think everybody has one thing that they're connected to quality of life wise, whether you're a single mom, or whether you're a big family person, or whether you're single with no kids and young and coming up, and you like to recreate or whatever that is. I want to make sure I'm asking you as a staff person, how are you building that into your regular routine? I'm not asking how was your weekend just to hear, how your weekend was. I want to hear, did you recharge? Did you refuel? Are you coming into this week, ready to attack the things? Because we've all got decision makers, we've all got community members, that are going to be a challenge. And so, if we're not investing into ourselves, I'm a Christian, I'm a big believer in prayer. Church is a big part of my life. And so, making sure that I take the time to invest into myself, spiritually, emotionally, physically, so that I can come and be who I am for my team. I try to reflect that in, if that means they're out sick and they need extra time and we've all got to pull together. I don't think it's any one technique or tactic, Craig. It's really just, again, back to the human connection and trying to make sure that you remember that people are people first. We're not just the tasks that we do. And so that they feel cared for and build the culture, that is a place you want to work for.
Right. And so I think the framework that you're saying there is, you can't save someone from drowning, or you can't save your community from drowning if you don't know how to swim or if you're drowning.
That's well said. That is well said. And I mean, it's funny you mentioned it, but it brings lifeguards to mind. And they're some of the hardest staff to manage, right? Like I have a 16-year-old, and I used to have a city manager in Lafayette that would say, nothing keeps me up at night like cops with guns and teenagers guarding pools. And, but if you have a great culture and those teenagers are part of, an aquatics program that really goes after customer service and goes after, of course, all the safety things, then you're going to just be in that much better shape. So it's a trickle down effect. Yeah. It starts in how you treat people, as human beings first.
Yeah. And okay. So I think this flows right into our next part of this discussion is, so let's say you've got an emotionally intelligent person that's really investing in themselves, that's making sure they're showing up on Monday, recharged, not exhausted. Let's talk about team building. How do you bring the team together to accomplish running the Parks and Rec department?
Well, I think you really have to be intentional, with that. Again, it's about making time, just like you're making time for yourself individually, making time for the team collectively, whether it be quarterly retreats. Here we do some different team building activities. I do a weekly roundtable check-in. We are typically reading at least like one leadership book with some takeaways, practically. And, nothing's off limits, in those conversations. So if we need to get into something, that's more challenging and asking tough questions. Right now, as a team, we're going through an old resource that I've had from CPRA, candor questions, where you just ask each other harder questions. Where are we inefficient? Go. Give us some feedback, of what you see in my division, for me personally, and being, vulnerable to each other. That all of that team building pays huge dividends. Even if you've got some staff that, kind of buck up against it, you got your maintenance guys and park superintendent, type folks that are, what does this have to do with, sometimes they can be your biggest breakthroughs.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I like how you said, where are we inefficient? Because that's sometimes the hardest thing to do in any organization is to delete or change from the old way. Or maybe, you have a 10-step process. Can we take this to a 4-step process? Why are we doing this? A lot of people don't want to be in charge of deleting something because they might be wrong. Mm-hmm. How do you kind of encourage people to look for those inefficiencies?
That's an interesting conversation. Right now, I'm in an agency where the first time we've had a traditionally partitioned park and recreation department in the city. That's what drove me to El Mirage, where I am, is we had a parks division that was managed under Public Works, but we have some contracted programming in the community through YMCA, but we had no internal park and recreation dedicated department. And so we're creating, the bike while we ride it. And we're, putting all the procedures and administrative things in place, seeing where there are gaps and inefficiencies. And so there is no one to offend, because it's not like we've done it, this way for 20, 30 years. We're putting new things in place. But I think when you're in an agency that is established and does have a lot of that, it's not being afraid to take on things that it's how we've always done things.
Yeah.
That's my least favorite statement. Well, we never did it that way. Well, let's just look at, even if it's a no, let's at least evaluate it and make that person feel affirmed that that kind of creativity and problem solving is prized and valued.
Yeah, and I think in Parks and Rec, it's hard to say we've never done it this way, and that's why we're going to keep doing it this way when you've got 12,000 experiments going on throughout the country of different ways to run Parks and Rec departments. And I think it's kind of arrogant to assume you're number one on the 12,000 list, and there's not some efficiency gain somewhere out there that you could learn from other people's, systems and processes.
That's so true. That's so true. The continuing education budget is that, and the uniform budget are the one I want to spend every year and overspend, because it builds morale, it builds team building, it builds ideas, and not staying stagnant. So,
yeah, especially since I've interviewed some people that are well over 100% cost recovery, and how they did it is so creative. And I think some of this stuff, it's universal knowledge that could be applied to every Parks and Rec department, but you just got to go search it out and then try to implement that in your own department.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk about the big move to Arizona. Kind of what were they looking for when they were out looking for someone to do what you're doing, and how did you pique their interest?
Yeah, so El Mirage is a small city on the west side of the Phoenix Valley, just over 35,000, and we're kind of jurisdictionally locked. We're about 10 square miles, and we're surrounded by all of our big neighbors of Surprise, Peoria, Glendale, Goodyear, Avondale, et cetera, that have just grown tremendously over the last 20 years. And El Mirage has grown too. We have had some unique commercial industrial opportunity. In our jurisdictional map, we have some challenges on every side, where we have the Luke Air Force Base to the south, and their flight patterns prohibit any kind of development on the southern portion of our boundaries. Yeah. And then we have a river on the east side of our boundaries that keep us from growing. We have a train track running through the north side, and then Surprise butts up against us to the west. And so we really are locked in kind of typical build out in the mid 2000s, where we had a lot of neighborhood pocket parks pop up, and little community parks. So we have just two large community parks, and one where we developed an indoor recreation center that we contract with the YMCA. And so we had all these disparate components, I guess was a long way of saying we had a lot of parks and recreation things going on, but no department that was internally dedicated to kind of driving those things forward. And so what the city was really looking for was somebody with a significant park and recreation background, where they could be the content matter expert, so that when I'm proposing things to our, city council decision makers, they can, feel affirmed that I'm, familiar enough from my background, but also familiar enough with NRPA and best practices and things of that nature, and committed to, again, those ideas and things of how do we bring, more youth sports programming into our community, but maybe we've got the constraint of not staffing up right away. And how do we enhance we have some great special events. How do we enhance those? But again, without, just funding more staff and doing things in a more traditional way. And so that's been the unique challenge. We've got a really excited small team here of our parks side of the house. We've got special events. We do have a small senior center, and bringing that team together to move parks and recreation forward in the community.
Yeah. Yeah, and that Phoenix area is just booming. I just spent about 8 hours in your airport in a layover. That was the first time I've been, but when I flew over it, I just couldn't believe how just the city just kept going on forever.
It does. I was saying to my wife this week, you could drive for 2 hours from northwest to southeast and still not have hit any open space. It is one giant metroplex, the 5th largest in the country.
Oh.
And really, just on a personal level, I went from probably the smallest, most remote agency you could find in the lower 48, in Meeker, Colorado, city of 2,000, surrounded by 2 million acres of public land on every side, to the 5th biggest metro, in the country. So
what's causing all that boom there? Is it all the tech industry and the chip fabs landing? And any idea what's causing Phoenix to explode like that?
That's definitely plays a part in it. It's quality of life stuff too. Arizona is still more affordable than California, believe it or not. And so we get some of that. And then, while the 115 days in the summer can be dreadful, it is pretty nice playing golf in January and February. Spring training time down here is pretty remarkable. And so there is something to be said for that, not having to shovel sunshine, they say. And getting out of the cold weather climates, we get a lot of that. So between the retirees, the tech industry growth, the quality of life, all of that, it's still a growing metro. And you can see a lot of agencies have done this strip annexation of large swaths of land where they've been able to secure their water portfolios, and you just see the development continuing. So
all right, so you've been here for 2 years, right?
2 years, yes. 2 years in December, so just over 2. And that has been a remarkable change. Still kind of feeling my way through it. A big shout out to Arizona. They've been super welcoming. It was very intentional in choosing, a robust park and recreation state. We've got a great association. We've got great professionals around both Phoenix and Tucson area, but really all over the state. And they take it serious down here as well. And they've got a long history, celebrated our 75th anniversary as a association this past year. So lots of good things happening in Arizona.
Yeah. And the state association annual, when is that coming up?
It's coming up in August. It's coming up in August here in Phoenix. It'll be our 76th. I help with the program committee for our state association with some great colleagues here. So we're looking forward to continuing to grow that.
Yeah. Well, we have 2 Parks and Rec state associations that are tentatively, and Arizona's one of them. Great.
We'd love to see you down here, Craig.
Yeah,
especially in August.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a slower time.
It is.
Like we're in the season coming up early in the year for a lot of Parks and Rec departments choose to have their annual event there. So August is kind of a time where we're like, hey, we could fit it in. So we're in discussions to try to attend there. And we actually have a sponsor that wants us to come there.
Oh, good.
Outdoor Link wants to.
Yes. Yeah, I'm familiar with them. Well, we'd love to have you down. I remember I came and presented at Arizona State Conference back pre-COVID when I was still in Colorado. And it was August then too in Tucson. And I thought, I'll get some outdoor recreation in and all that. No, unless you're in the pool is more survival than recreation in August here. Yeah.
Y'all get some pretty intense summers. All right. So what is your vision for your Parks and Rec department right now? As far as now that you've got kind of 2 years under your belt, where do you see yourself in the next 5 or 10 years is where you want to take your department?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. My vision is just for us to have a far more traditional park and recreation landscape in the next 5 to 10 years. And so looking for creative outlets, we've expanded some of our special event programming. We've expanded kind of our partnership with the YMCA to do what they do. We work with some contractors here in the Valley to provide programming that we wouldn't otherwise be doing if we weren't around as a department. On our senior center side, we're doing a lot more enrichment programming. We've got an inaugural Cesar Chavez Day of Service Memorial Walk coming up. That's new to our portfolio because of our great senior services coordinator. And so it's really just more of that. There isn't kind of a destination of we want to be this many staff or this many programs. I try to shy away from that and just really looking at what are the opportunities in front of us. Actually, El Mirage will celebrate its 75th anniversary here in 2026. And so we have a fall fiesta going on where just as a small example, we've always been limited in never being able to do a fireworks show because of our proximity to our Air Force Base. So we are going to do our very first drone show. And while other agencies have been doing drone shows, to our community, that will be new. And we have an economically more depressed portion of our community that probably wouldn't go to other communities' drone shows and large festivals. And so this might be an opportunity for them to walk to their local park and see a drone show custom created for El Mirage. That, to me, when I look around and I see El Mirage kids in El Mirage programs for the first time that wouldn't otherwise have been offered had our department not been here, that's where I know we'll have arrived.
Yeah.
So.
And we actually went to the Georgia Parks and Rec Association, and they had a drone show there just to kind of demonstrate what could be done. I was just blown away how cool it is.
Yeah, it's such a nice feature. And we're going to turn off all the lights in the park, turn off all the music, get the inflatable generators down, all those things, and really make it a great culminating, experience in the community.
Now, how did y'all? I'm not even sure what's the rough approximate price tag for a good drone show in place of a 4th of July celebration, and then how did y'all choose?
We had some great vendors. We looked at not just local but regional vendors, and I'd say for a 10 to 15 minute show, you're looking anywhere from 20 to 30,000 or more, depending on how elaborate you want to get. And sometimes you can pair fireworks with them. We couldn't, but you can, and all those things drive up price, and whether you do multiple shows. But for us, around 25,000, we get a really quality show. It's a high price tag, but again, for a 75th anniversary, we're bringing out bands and inflatables and all the costs of the special event. We think it'll be a memorable time.
Yeah. All right. So we have a little bit of time left. I wanted you to speak on contract services versus in-house, because that's something you've had a little bit of experience. So maybe just speak on the pros and cons of having, third parties doing stuff for the city versus bringing that in-house.
Throughout the course of your career, and I would say this to any park and rec professional, you just really have to weigh what are the costs and benefits of doing things via contract versus in-house. When I was in Meeker, the next closest town was 40 to 50 miles away. There were no contractors in our small community. If you wanted something done, you had to do it yourself. You had to do everything by employee. We didn't have a part-time workforce because the only part-time staff in that small community are high schoolers. And so if you wanted things done, you really had to hire not just staff, but full-time staff. And with that, you get a high level of quality, a high level of ownership, a high level of control when you're doing things in-house. But it comes with a great responsibility of, keeping everybody happy, building a culture that people want to work for, et cetera. Versus with contractors, whether it's a janitorial contract or a youth sports contract, whatever it is, you maybe don't control your own destiny as much. But it also, if you're in a large market like we are here in Phoenix, Valley of the Sun, there's competitiveness too. There's competitiveness for them to do things with quality. And so, if we wanted to bring on a youth sports contractor, it's not just one, agency that's, servicing the Valley, there's multiple opportunities there. And so the quality control, can still be there if you're diligent and you're looking at outcomes and you care about customer service. And it's really about being, resident focused and, listening to their feedback and not passing the buck, looking yourself in the face when you do get those feedback. Those are precious. We have a QR code on all of our park signs, that allows public to give feedback. And, we get, one, on a very regular basis. And whether it's complaining about irrigation or, vandalism on a playground, those are invaluable. And it's the same thing with an email about a program from a parent. Hey, I was at a skate park and your contractor, showed up late or, didn't do something well. Well, not just passing that back off to the contractor, but who's overseeing that contract and how can we improve and, get to good outcomes. So I think that's a creative way for us to look at service delivery in Parks and Recreation. We're often the largest employer within a municipality between, part-time staff and instructors and all the things. But contracted services can really go a long way to supplementing our program portfolios and, how we manage it. Right now, I have a unique aspect where we manage kind of special projects in our parks maintenance division, and then we have a landscape contractor oversee all of our routine maintenance. And so there's, on-site interaction that has to happen and quality control that has to happen with those guys on a regular basis. And so it's for a small agency, again, that's trying to build more traditional parks and rec. It's keeping our fingers on the pulse of all of those different things, caring about the details. If a tree's overgrowing into somebody's yard, well, that's a big deal for that one person. That becomes an emergency. In the scope of everything we got to deal with, it may not be a big deal, but for that person, it is. And so how we respond to that in a timely manner, to both assure the customer that we will get to it, but also actually going and following through. Keeping our tabs on the response times and just quality all the way around.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So we have a little tradition at the end of our show. Our previous guest left a question for you.
Oh, and cool.
So this question comes from the director in Charlottesville, Virginia, Rian Anthony. And he says, what is your biggest struggle in terms of cultural change within your department?
Oh, gosh. I would say the culture change with being a brand new department is getting our decision makers, mostly at the elected official level, to understand what goes into a traditional Parks and Recreation department and what it takes to offer things at a high level. Everybody comes into an elected position, with some different things that they are wanting to move forward. And, parks is visible to everybody. Programming is visible to everybody. And so, if there's, kind of dispelling with old notions of being able to do everything with volunteers, or I can do everything with grant money, or, these kind of, those are all great tools in the toolbox. But Parks and Recreation is a robust field that requires, solid leaders with good backgrounds in order to move it forward. And so that's my biggest challenge, is doing that education at that level, and not getting frustrated along the way, whether, we get frustrated, hey, we want to grow faster, we want to do more. Well, it takes time to sometimes move the needle. So
yeah, it sure does. Okay, so I know I'm putting you on the spot, but what question would you like to leave from our next guest?
So I'm going to go into this with the part of our Your and I's conversation and ask what are some great ways that you have invested into your staff's personal care?
What are some great ways that you have invested in your staff's personal care?
Yeah.
Ways. And what is your answer to that question?
My answer to that question would be checking in with them daily on how they're doing that for themselves. Maybe not daily, but on a weekly basis with my leadership team, checking in with, how are they investing in themselves, whether it's their family life or hobbies or fitness, whatever it is.
Yeah. And that could be anything, like, I did like a 5K this weekend or.
Absolutely. Yep. My parks maintenance division manager was in my office this morning saying he took his kids up to Williams in the north part of Arizona, and they saw snow for the very first time. Wow. They took sleds and tubes and, did the whole deal with his young kids. And it was a great conversation, right? It took 5 minutes before we jumped into the meat and potatoes of the day to check in. And, he's living out the recreation values that we're working to advance, And so to me, that makes the rest of the day that much more valuable.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Sean, I really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing your story and all the wisdom that you've gained over the years, and good luck with launching this department in Arizona.
Thank you, Craig. Thanks for all you're doing for our industry, and big shout out to you and the team, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And
hopefully I can see you if we can pull off going to your state convention in August.
I'd love to see you. We'll set up some great interviews.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
All
Have a
right.
great week. Take care.
Thanks, man. You too.
All right. So that was another great interview with Sean from Arizona. I love how he spoke about really checking in on your team as far as their personal care and stuff, and how that really helps, when you're building a team, make sure that everybody's kind of taking care of themselves and they're not drowning or overwhelmed or burnt out. I think that's an important part of building any team. Okay. So we have our second show. It's called Smart Parks Forward, coming up at 1:30 p.m. Eastern in a few minutes. And so this is going to be a regular show every second and fourth Mondays of the month. And I think we had to move things around to have it today, but it's hosted with Dave Ramirez, who is one of our latest shows and latest show hosts. And so that'll be starting here in a few minutes. So stay tuned, take a little coffee break, and we'll be right back to start that show. Jovi, if you want to go ahead and kick off the closing promos, and we'll see y'all here in a minute.
On the Daily Parks and Rec Show, we bring you the real stories of tomorrow's professionals, people shaping the future, one idea at a time. Meet the very first DPRS interns to officially host their own segment, Aidan Tierney and Michael Morrow. With curiosity, passion, and a fresh perspective, they're stepping into the spotlight to lead meaningful conversations with today's rising leaders. The Young Professionals Network takes you inside the journeys, challenges, and major wins of young individuals making their mark across industries. From first jobs to bold ventures, every story fuels growth, ambition, and innovation. Each episode brings real conversations, fresh perspectives, and impactful insights created to motivate the next generation of professionals. Whether you're just starting out, exploring new paths, or figuring out your next move. Tune in to the Young Professionals Network every Thursday at 5 p.m. only on the Daily Parks and Rec Show. Don't miss it, because your next big idea might be one story away.
Are you a vendor, brand, or service provider ready to connect with the heartbeat of local communities? At DPRS Media Co., we tell the stories shaping parks and recreation across America. Through podcasts, live streams, videos, and newsletters, we reach frontline leaders, city directors, and decision makers every single week. From youth sports and facilities to programming and policy, our audience is your audience. Sponsoring or partnering with DPRS Media Co. puts your brand in front of the professionals who build, budget, and buy for their communities. Launching a new product, growing your presence in public spaces, targeting cities, counties, or departments, DPRS is your trusted media partner. Whether you're in software, turf, aquatics, robotics, smart cities, or special events, partnering with DPRS puts your brand in the story. With commercials, interviews, social campaigns, newsletters, and live shows, we're your media team. Partner with us and grow your impact in the $200 billion parks and rec industry. DPRS Media Co. Stories that move parks and rec forward. Your audience is here. Let's meet them.